Very good evening, community. Welcome to a new session of those horror stories that we know you like so much. Don't forget to subscribe, give us your valuable like, and activate the campaign so you don't miss the next cabinet of horror story. It was 6 in the evening. I had just finished classes, and the tiredness after hours of university was starting to be felt. Even so, I was going to go to Candlelight Reads, the town bookstore. It was my second anniversary with Emily, and it had to be special, especially considering the difficult time we were going through. With the surprise I had planned for that night, I hoped to fix things. I really couldn't lose her. The breeze was fresher than previous sunsets. Autumn was beginning to say goodbye to make way for winter. Such a longed-for winter. People on the street were bundled up. Some were wearing hats and gloves as a compliment to protect themselves from the cold. I, for my part, was comfortable with my black jacket. I walked along the sidewalk with my hands in my pockets, watching the cars pass from in front of me until they disappeared from the corner of my eye. I had the wireless headphones that Emily gave me a little over a month ago for my birthday. In them, the soft voice of Joy Crooks with Feel Don't Fail Me Now accompanied my journey. The wind caressed my face as it passed, just imagining Emily's smile when she saw the surprise I had for her. I started to smile too. The tiredness in my back and legs began to degrade to the point of disappearing. I felt renewed. Why you? Control nerd. She is such a magical person in my life that stress, problems, and worries disappear thanks to her. After walking for a few minutes, I arrived at the place I was looking for, Aboru. The glass door was an eye-catching sign. A closed book, on the cover of which was written the name of the place, Candlelight Reads, in a striking red, cursive font. Below it, the brief phrase was "Read, the place for your next adventures." The bookstore was located in a residential area where there weren't many other businesses, just houses and small buildings. I pushed the door open and entered. The tinkling of a bell hanging on the inside, just above the threshold, announced my arrival. The atmosphere there was much warmer than outside. The heating was so good that you would never think it was about 12 or 11 degrees outside, maybe even less. One felt warm, as if at home inside. Although I was never an avid reader, I always loved the smell of paper, and this was no exception. The aroma of books perfumed the entire environment, making the experience more pleasant. Although the place was small, the shelves on the walls were full of books of all kinds. There were small signs everywhere, separating genres. Among them, I read romance, detective stories, dramas. A good variety without a doubt. A few seconds passed as I dedicated myself to contemplating the interior, until a blonde woman, about 50 or so, looked up from the computer in front of her to welcome me. "Good afternoon. How can I help you, sir?" "You're just in time. I was about to close." Her voice was effusive, and judging by the excitement with which she greeted me, she must not have had many customers that day. "Good afternoon. I was looking for something scary." "Mystery," I replied hesitantly, approaching the counter where she was sitting. "Oh, yes. I have a wide variety of that genre. I have Poe, Conan Doyle, Stephen King. Are you looking for a particular story or author?" she inquired, recalling the available inventory. Yes, I was looking for Lovecraft. I replied immediately, remembering Emily's favorite author. I had heard her talk about him and his books so many times that the surname had stuck with me. Yes, I have, the woman replied automatically, and then typed a few things on the computer. I have the Horror at Dunwich, the Shadow over Innsmouth, at the Mountains of Madness. Do you know any of these? To be honest, no, I replied with a smile. None of those titles sounded familiar to me. As I said, I did learn the surname, but the rest is asking too much. It's for my girlfriend. She's the book fanatic. I'm not really much of a reader, I explained quickly. Oh, I see. How about I recommend one? It's one of Lovecraft's classics. It never fails. It's also very varied. And if she likes the author, I'm sure she'll love this book, she suggested. And it sounded like the best idea to me. Of course, I agreed. So she went to look on one of the shelves that remained at the back, against the wall. Horror. The small black sign indicated where she began her search. Seconds later, she returned with a smile on her face and a book in her hands. The Call of Cthulhu, she presented. The cover seemed very striking, with a terrifying creature emerging from the darkness. If the cover was like that, I didn't want to imagine the stories written inside. Besides, it looked like it had quite a few pages, as the spine was considerably wide. Emily was sure to love it. I didn't hesitate for a second. It was perfect. I paid the bookstore clerk and took it. Outside, it was starting to get dark. I had to hurry before it got later. The moonlight was soft, allowing me to see just enough and no more. The only audible sound was that of the occasional car driving through the streets of Harlow, although the roar was very distant, almost non-existent. You had to pay attention to perceive it. I hadn't seen anyone in a long time. The last one was Roger Crawford, the owner of the butcher shop on Timpany Street, whom I found locking up his shop. He looked at me. I looked at him, and we exchanged a silent greeting, bowing our heads fleetingly and respectfully. But that had been about 15 minutes ago. The circumstances were perfect for a private moment between Emily and I. We had been through very difficult times, and we could use the privacy so that nothing would come between our love. My hands trembled just thinking about her. Or was it because of the cold? Maybe both, but more because of her. What was to come was a fundamental moment to define the future of the relationship. I couldn't afford to fail. Things had to go perfectly, with no margin for error, so as not to lose her love, which at this point in life, with all the family problems and work frustrations, was the fuel that kept me alive. I moved among the shadows, dodging the light bulbs and reflectors. The last thing I needed was for some gossip to find me and hinder my plan. Everything had to be kept secret. After my past mistakes, Emily's family didn't want to see me near their daughter. If they found out about these little secret meetings, they would kill me. I shouldn't worry about them. The only important person here was Emily. Besides, you have to have faith in life. And I had faith that after this, she would forgive me and we could move on. A few meters away, hidden behind some trees, and helped by the darkness of the night to camouflage himself, I managed to distinguish the secret place where Emily was waiting for me. A tingling spread throughout my legs, forcing me to quicken my pace. For a second, I was out of breath. The excitement was strong, both inside and outside my body. And how? I stopped against one of the stone walls of that hideout. I looked around to make sure no one had followed me. Indeed, I was alone out there. The only thing I saw moving was the treetops pushed by the night wind. There was nothing to worry about. I pulled my phone out of my pants pocket and checked the time. Once, 15 p.m. I was still on time. I put the phone back in its place and then ran the same hand through my hair to quickly style it. I wanted to look good, a little, at least. I took a few more steps until I reached the metal door and put my hands on it. I immediately felt the rough touch of corrosion and the smell of rust. I pushed the door open very carefully so as not to make a noise, but it was impossible. It was so heavy that some squeaking escaped anyway. As soon as the door opened, a nauseating smell escaped from inside that turned my stomach. Without a doubt, it wasn't the best setting for a miraculous reconciliation, but love is what matters, not the place, right? I took a step, entering the infinite darkness that reigned inside. The moonlight accompanied a few meters, and I had to resort to my cell phone again, this time to use the flashlight. I activated this function, and immediately I had a better view of the panorama. The long marble table in the center of the room was the first thing my eyes saw, followed by the cracked concrete walls. Both these walls and the ceiling were covered in cobwebs and a greenish-white mold. I felt a huge disgust. I had to close my eyes and mentally strengthen myself to continue. I had to do it for Emily. It was the only safe place where we could see each other alone. Speaking of her, I couldn't see her anywhere. Speaking of her, I couldn't see her anywhere. Where was she? I shone my cell phone in all directions until I found her. There she was, sitting in a corner, with her back against the wall. Poor thing. She must be tired. And worst of all, she was there because of me, because she could easily be lying down, resting. Love. Happy anniversary, I exclaimed with my voice broken by the cocktail of emotions. It was obvious that she wasn't going to jump for joy, but her reaction hurt me. Not only did she not answer, but she didn't even look at me. She remained motionless, without moving a muscle. I know I haven't been the best boyfriend, but please give me a chance. It won't be easy. It's going to keep costing us both, like it is now. But I promise you that in a while, all the effort will be worth it, and we're going to be happy again. Together, I added, with my heart controlling my words. Again, I got no answers. I felt a sharp pain in my chest, as if I were being stabbed over and over again. Please, Emily, listen to me. Say something. I need you to talk to me. I need you to live. You know you're all I have, and that you're the only person I want to be with for the rest of my life. I blurted out, my voice distorted by the knot of sadness that had by now solidified in my throat. My legs gave way from despair, and I fell to my knees beside her. The phone slipped from my hands and fell to the side, next to the marble table. I fell to the ground and felt the porous and rough cement floor dig into the palms of my hands. I brought you a book, I told her, hoping that would help to fix things. It's by that writer you always talk about, Lovecraft. I went to the bookstore we used to go to and bought it for you. It's about myths, I think. The cover looks great. It must have a lot of horror like you like. Look. I hastily took off my backpack with such desperate movements that I almost elbowed Emily in the face. Thank God That wasn't the case. I placed the backpack in front of me, in sight of Emily, and opened the largest zipper. I reached into the pocket and searched until I felt the touch of the book's cover and pulled it out. Look, The Call of Cthulhu, do you know it? I asked her, but she wasn't even interested in my gift. The rejection broke my heart. I couldn't take it anymore and reached out to her, cupping her face in my hands. Her pale, cold face. I looked into her beautiful brown eyes, which I could have admired for hours on end at another time. But this time I couldn't. The emptiness of her gaze gave me such a chill that I had to look away. I let go of her and burst into tears. The little tears that welled up from my eyes slid down my face, taking a warm path until they separated from my skin and fell to the floor. Quickly, the floor, which until seconds ago had been too dry, became wet around me. Nothing was going to fix my mistakes. It didn't depend on me, on my good deeds. It didn't even depend on Emily or her family anymore. I raised my head and looked at Emily again. I shook her shirt a little to remove some worms that were moving on her clothes. And inevitably, I looked at her wrist. It was open, and it was the only part of her body that wasn't pale. This section was completely black. "I'm sorry, Emily," I said in a thread of a voice, barely understandable. If it weren't for me, she wouldn't have done that. If it weren't because I'm an idiot and cheated on her with the stupid Tara Clark, we would be happily alive, at home, having movie nights, or talking about those books she read. That I groped in the darkness until I found it lying on the floor. I held it in one hand and put my other arm around Emily's cold neck, hugging her. I felt her dry hair against my chest. That comforted me a little. Whatever happens, I'm not going to leave her alone. I didn't leave her alone in the coffin. In fact, into the cemetery, I got her a refuge in this old abandoned mausoleum that I found. The only one without a key or chains. Nobody's going to come here to bother us. And I can come to visit the love of my life every night. It's our secret. I opened the book and start reading the first page to Emily. This is where I want to be forever. You know what? I won't even leave this mausoleum. Nothing will make me leave. Not the passage of time. Not the university. Not the family. Not the work. Not hunger. And much less the search for another love. Here I can be with Emily. Together forever. And that's what matters. Don't forget to subscribe, give us your valuable like, and activate the campaign so you don't miss the next cabinet of horror story.